Yeah, we got the 33 of McLeod sitting on the outside of the front row. We got Max Grau, the 34 car, sitting on the pole. And of course, what Grau is going to want to do, and as he controls the field there, he's going to want to make that move down to the inside, keep that position, because as they roll through and exit turn 1, again, the very first heavy braking passing opportunity here at Sebring, turn number 3, is a very sharp, almost 90-degree left-hander, so pretty critical that he sticks it to the inside and he keeps it there. Of course, that is where Larry McLeod is going to want to be. He's not going to want to be held to the outside.
There it is, green flag in the air here from Sebring for the SCCA eSports Super Tour. 20 minutes on the board already, side by side, and they've signaled it out. The first two get in line as they rumble down to turn 1, Greg.
All right, and as they head now down into turn number 1, Grau manages to hold on to the position, and it looks like Larry McLeod just did not get a good jump there off the start. He falls back into third with Caleb Patry currently sitting behind our leader Max Grau as they roll down now through turn 3. And McLeod, the older, pushes a little bit wide. We've got Sean Valandia and then Max King. And the driver to really get caught out there started 4th. He's now fallen back 6th is Jackson McLeod in the 133 car.
And Sean Valandia, opportunistic move in the 51 car. He's gained a couple spots. Side by side now is Emil Orza in the 99 as they rumble down to the hairpin for the first time here. There's the 31 of Crab, a little bit defensive to his inside. That looks to be Jake King in the 39. He wants to take a position here.
Yeah, and Jake King, he gets by the number 99 car, but cannot get around the number 31 as they now come out of turn 8 going into Fangio, and as they roll down towards turn 10, another very sharp right-hand turn that they're setting up for right here. Again, another typically not a passing opportunity. Cars carry a little bit more speed, but you'll see a couple attempts here under braking as the 57 of Tommy Bordeaux attempts to go around Justin Clardy in the 7. And Clardy staying to the inside. He's going to be fine. He manages to hold off. Of course, the next big turn that he has to worry about is going into 13, the tower turn, which is going to be a right-hander, which brings you onto that Flying Fortress straight as they roll out right about now.
Yeah, the Flying Fortress straight really isn't a whole lot. We got a car around in the background. Sorry to cut off there, but it's
it looks like the 700 car that went around.
Yeah, Joaquin Effinger in the 700. But we're talking about this straight. That turn 13 is such an important corner because these cars are essentially full throttle. 31's around the background. That's Miles Crabbe spun out.
And a number of other drivers that are having some issues. Looks like Emil Orza went to avoid in the number 99 car. He ran to the right drivers right now. Again, not a lot of there are no gravel traps out there. It looks like
Michael
we've got
Kinney. Motor gone.
Kinney going off now on the Ullman straight. Maybe blew a downshift coming through the chicane there through Le Mans.
Might have been looking for 4th and found 2nd or some other combination, but that's heartbreaking to lose a motor on lap number 1, especially due to a shift. But look at Larry McLeod back up to 2nd here out of turn 17.
Yeah, and I think the big change right at the back of that group there is Max Grau in the number 34 car. You know, he was your pole sitter, and as they went through the first half of the lap, he was sitting pretty in the front of the pack. He's now sitting back in 6th, so he must have had some problems there that we just didn't catch. And he now has Jackson McLeod. He's got Max King, Sean Valandia ahead of him before he can even get onto the podium here.
Frantic start, and we've already seen some of our leaders have issues. There's Whitley Strickland in the background off in turn 1. That's a lot of damage. Looks like Kevin Bubar in the 240 also involved. So a few incidents here and there, but we're going to stay focused back up at the front here because Patry's starting to pull away in the 198.
Yeah, he is. He now has his, he comes out of, looks like out of turn 5 going into turn, actually he's coming into the hair clip right now, or probably the paper clip right now over at turn 7, and he's opened things up just a little bit as our top 6 drivers have really started to separate themselves out from Steve Ray, Jake King, and Emil Orza, sitting 7th, 8th, and 9th respectively now here, and we're on board with Tommy Bordeaux in the number 57 car. Bordeaux currently sitting 12th, and he makes an attempted pass here on Dave Ogburn in the orange number 08 car going into turn 10, and Bordeaux gets it done.
pass complete for the 57. He actually started back in 18th position, so he's +7 in a lap and a half. So a really good start for the 57 car. Moving back up towards the front, though, Patry was pulling away, but Larry McLeod reeling him back in here. And this is an important place on the racetrack to reel somebody back in, because you have that long back straightaway all the way down to Sunset Bend, and Sean Valandia is right there as well. So the top three, kind of a little bit of a breakaway. It's 7/10 back to Max King, but that might be smaller by the time they get to 17.
Yeah, I think as they go down the Ullman Straight here, things will start to close up, and you can see here already our leader Patry moving all the way driver's right, trying to break the draft of McLeod, and our top two drivers, Patry and McLeod, starting to separate themselves from the rest of the field. But look at this move right here, moving up now and trying to get his way around a number of cars. Jackson McLeod getting around the 51 car of Sean Valandia, and also looks as though Max King has managed to follow along and get around Max Grau as well.
Move Max King up to 4 side by side is Grau and Valandia down the front straight away. It looks like Patry is going to keep Larry McLeod behind him. And in the background, you're going to see a silver car. That's Steve Ray and Emil Orza right behind. Miles Crabb in the 31 again has trouble. So does Eric Lane in turn 17. So they're going to call it a night there. So some damage to those cars. Looking a little bit deeper, Dave Ogburn back on the inside of Tommy Bordeaux and recompletes the pass. So these two still locked in a dogfight for 11th spot.
All right, and there's that battle with Ogburn rolling through with Bordeaux and Franco, Richard Franco, the 173 car right behind. Franco trying to get back up, but Ogburn having some issues with the curbing there, bounces off the curbs and gives Bordeaux the opportunity, and Bordeaux takes advantage. He retakes the position away from Ogburn to move Bordeaux up to 11th, and it looks like Franco in the 173 managed to get by Ogburn as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the curbs. That's not something we really touched on yet tonight, Greg, but the curbs here depends on what corner you're in, because some of them you can use and some of them I would advise to stay very, very far away from. Again, this racetrack is very old and it retains a lot of the original curbing, or curbing at least old style, but it's a lot taller and a lot more aggressive than the FIA, the flatter style curbing that you see in a lot of other racetracks now. So it'll mess up your suspension, it'll put you offline. You have to be really careful what corner you're in and how aggressive you are with that curb, because it can certainly throw you for a loop, as it did a little while ago for that 08 car of Dave Ogburn.
All right, and as our leaders come down the Flying Fortress Straight and make their way through Bishop, turn 14, and into the chicane, what we also call Le Mans here, looks as though the top three drivers have closed up just a little bit. Now, as I've been watching our front two drivers, you'll notice coming out of Le Mans onto the Ullman Straight for the second lap in a row, Caleb Patry, our leader in the 198 car, was able to stretch things out, at least for a moment there, over Larry McLeod, but McLeod doesn't fall out of the draft completely. And as they come down now into turn 17, into Sunset Bend, McLeod is pretty darn close and running a little bit tighter line through here than our leader Patry. And Patry, if he continues to take that very wide set, that late entry into Sunset, he's giving up a lot of ground, and that's where McLeod seems to close back up, and it's also allowing Jackson McLeod to close up as well, because the son of Larry definitely in the draft there as they roll out of turn 1, come through that tiny little bend here at turn 2 and set up for turn number 3.
If I'm Caleb Patry, though, I'm keeping an eye on these two behind me, because they are going to work together. That's just the father and son combination, and Max King's probably going to hitch a toe as well. So these three cars behind Patry, I'm not so sure that they're going to sit in line. We got two drivers that are obviously working together, and they kind of have the leg up on a driver that's all by themselves. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Larry and Jackson just draft right on by Patry as soon as they can build up a big enough of a run, probably between turn 16 and 17, like we saw them kind of planning. In the background, you see Steve Ray under attack from Sean Valandia and Emil Orza in the 99.
Yeah, and it looks like Orza doesn't have much of anywhere to go, as Valandia for a moment there had pulled up alongside. But I think the 99 of Orza, he seems pretty content to sit and try to help Ray forward. But I think at some point here, as Ray continues to fall off the pace of the drivers ahead of him, that Orza's really going to have to make the decision of when it's really go time. Because I think at this point, the 11 car might be the limiting factor factor here for the 99 and the 51.
It looks to be that way. So let's look a little bit deeper in the field. And Mike Taylor in the 66, Eric Parker in the 27. These guys have just been kind of in their own little world back here in 15th and 16th, drafting together. And then it's 10 seconds back to Sam Rolfe in the 85, who had a little bit of trouble on the opening couple laps. Miles Crabb went out and spun out actually twice in the 31 after starting up in 8th spot. So this has been kind of a disastrous run for that 31 team.
Yeah, it's been a problem for him, and he's under attack now from Kevin Bubar in the 240 car. And you can see Bubar, he's spending a lot, and he's had some damage as well. Looks like Bubar is trying to look, get in the mirrors of the 85 car. He's taking alternate lines through almost every corner here, and I think he's just trying to throw Rolfe off at this point. All right, let's jump back up to the front of the field here if we can. Here as our drivers are starting to make their way through Sunset, and the McLeods, I think, as close as they've been to Patry at this point, rolling through 17. As a matter of fact, for a moment there, Larry McLeod had actually come underneath and was right up to the quarter panel of our leader, the 198 car. But now the son, Jackson, pulling right alongside, and he's going to have position going down into turn 1.
Yeah, I think Larry's going to let him on by, but that's going to open the door for Max King to come through as well. And when watching the McLeod's lines through 17, they're keeping the car a lot tighter, and Patry's kind of swinging out wider and later apexing, which is giving him a better run down the straightaway, but leaving him vulnerable through the first part of the corner. So on the last lap, that's not going to work. The McLeods are going to just stick the nose up in there. They'll have that spot. If you see Larry drop back to 5th now as Max King and Max Grau go through for 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, and I was going to mention the driver that we probably should be watching is Max King in the 25 car. He hasn't had the ultimate pace of the McLeods through here. He's definitely been lucky with the draft, but as our two, as Grau and McLeod come through, as Patry and McLeod come through turn 6 right here. The reason I say we want to look at Max King, knowing how he drives in an analog, in a real Spec Racer Ford, he's a very aggressive driver, has a tendency to make non-traditional moves in non-traditional places, and if that translates to iRacing and to the esports world, I would suspect that we're going to see him try to throw that car into some places that we might not expect, and he might not wait till the very last lap to do it.
You can see, look at Jackson dragging wheels off track at the exit of turn 13. Let's talk a little bit about the S's up here, really. There's a lot of curbing and a lot of concrete and pavement here, and it's so easy to get yourself a cut course here in iRacing if you just cut it a little bit too tight. And these cars are also low enough that if you straddle the curbs too much, you can actually kind of surf across the top of the curbs without your wheels touching the ground. You see these guys respecting the track limits quite a bit here, but as we get closer and closer to the end of the race, they're going to be playing with those limits a bit more, and I wouldn't be surprised to see someone get a penalty towards the end.
That is definitely a possibility, and of course, when they go wide and take a wide trip off of those track limits in iRacing, they're usually it's a requirement to let the car that they would have passed go by, or to hold up and basically give a couple seconds back here as Patry and Jackson McLeod now come through Sunset through 17, and once again you notice here, Kyle, where McLeod takes a much earlier entry and is much closer to the wall drivers right on entry, and it allows them to make up a lot of ground that they may have lost coming out of Le Mans onto the Ullman Straight.
Look at this run around the outside, though, for Jackson McLeod. Maybe a bit too deep into the corner. Going to run wide. Patry stays hard. Drivers left, side by side as they run down to turns 2 and 3, but Patry's going to have the preferred line here for at least turn 3.
And look at a move here. Max Grau coming to the inside of Max King, just cannot get it done. You don't have a lot of room to finish a pass off on the exit of turn 3 before you have to set up for the quick little right-hand bend and then the sharp left-hander at turn 5. So looks as though Max King able to hold off Grau at least momentarily.
Now down into the hairpin again, 6.5 minutes to go, and the front 5 are all together. Larry McLeod is actually losing a little bit of time to the front 4, but with them battling like this, has brought him right back into the mix. So still, any one of these top 5 drivers could win. It's 4.7 seconds back to Steve Ray, who's got Volandia and Orza together. And unless they really start to kick it in gear and make up time, I don't think they're going to get back to those front 5. It's really a 5-horse race right now. Dan Bullis is around in the 44. That's in turn number 1. A lot of damage on the nose of that car.
Yeah, it looks like he ended up getting to the wall there, turned in early, which is not an uncommon thing there. It's really difficult to judge. You know, when you talk about blind turns, because of how high the wall is there, right at the apex, you really don't have a good idea. You can't really sight through the corner here, as we've got another push for the lead here from Jackson McLeod.
Yeah, that was actually a cleaner shift that got him the run here. Petrie was a little bit slow going from the 3rd to 4 shift, and that's what let Jackson McLeod on through onto the straightaway. So move the 133 up to the lead. It'll be 5 minutes to go, and it'll be 2 laps to go when we come back around to the start-finish line here. About a 2-minute, 30-second lap time, and by the time they make it all the way around, only be about 7 miles left in this race. Now they're weaving again. You see in the background there's Steve Ray and Volandia trading positions, but the top 5 still nose to tail.
Yeah, so it looks like Volandia and Orza probably just decided that they can't sit behind Steve Ray long enough, but Orza not able to get by. Orza still sitting right behind here, as Max King talked about making aggressive moves here as he comes underneath Jackson McLeod, and as they come out of Sunset onto the front straight, Caleb Petrie back in the lead, but now side by side the battle for second with Max King and Jackson McLeod, and King has preferred line going into turn number 2, but of course his entry is going to be compromised just a little bit as he's pushed to the inside by the 133 car, and Max Grau, you can see him kind of chomping at the bit there as they come through turn 2 and set up for turn number 3.
Oh, he's into turn 3 really deep, but he actually got alongside, so Jackson McLeod goes back to 2nd, Max King back to 4th. There was actually a bit of a touch side by side with Petrie and McLeod going into 17, just the slightest of touches that put Jackson offline enough to let Grau and King on through, but obviously their move down in turn 3 put the 34 back in first spot. Now look at them updrafting here. They know they lost about a second to those front 2. They need to work together to get back up towards that front.
Yeah, and you can see Max King, though, moving to the inside a little bit, and I'm wondering if he made that move to try and cover Larry McLeod just a little bit, but as you see, King now dropping a wheel on the exit of turn number 6.
Now the run down to turn 10 now. There's Jackson McLeod looking to driver's left. Petrie a bit defensive, moves back onto the line. Greg, what's the general courtesy? There's actually a car stopped over there on the outside of 10. That might be Charles Langford in the 87.
I think that's Langford, 87 car, exactly. And he wisely let the leaders go by, and it looks like his day may be done here.
I think that's safe to say. That car is a little worse for wear at the moment.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you a little bit about the etiquette when it comes to going defensive. Obviously, you're typically allowed one move that's not reactionary to the trailing driver. What's the general rule? Are you allowed to move back on line if you go defensive and they don't take it, or are you committed to that line once you make that move?
Again, it's one move, and if the driver behind you does not make a reaction, then you're kind of okay there. You can slide back over and retake your position. Again, it's your line to take as long as you're not actively mimicking what the driver behind you is doing.
Move for second. That was Max Grau going through Jackson McLeod, and Larry McLeod and Max King, they got distracted with themselves, Greg, so they've got a lot of ground to make up in about one lap here. Looks like Emil Orza has gone through to 6 past Steve Ray, but white flag going to be in the air as see Ray go back to the inside of Orza through Sunset Bend, and here comes Volandia as well.
Yeah, Orza had some issues there on entrance to Sunset, and allows Steve Ray back on by. Volandia then dropping back behind those two drivers. So Volandia now back into 8th, Steve Ray, where he'd spent the majority of the race, back up to 6th.
Those guys will continue to do battle here, but one more lap around Sebring International Raceway for the first of 5 races tonight for the Hoosier SCCA eSports Super Tour. And Petrie now has a half a second lead. Is this too far out in front? Will that draft from Grau be enough to make up that gap on that last straightaway?
Yeah, well, Grau, he may be just a little bit out of the draft, but what we'll have to see is if Grau has been watching the line that Petrie takes into 17. As long as he doesn't lose a lot of ground coming through Le Mans, coming through the chicane over at 15 and 16, and gets a good run out, he may be able to get back up to our leader coming onto the Ullman Straight. So we'll have to take a look there because again, there's not a lot of time left and not a lot of corners left here for Max Grau to take that lead.
And Jackson McLeod's got to be thinking the only way that he's got a chance to win this race is if Max Grau has a chance to win the race. So they'll probably work together. We're running about a time here, about a half a lap left. And Caleb Patry now is a 7/10 to the second lead. It has grown a little bit, but now comes the longer legs part of the lap, the longer straights. And all about hitting turn 13. Patry a little bit offline, but so is Grau. He's actually going to get in the dirt on corner exit. That's going to kill momentum. And Jackson McLeod going to go to the inside. So if these two fighting, Patry's just going to wave goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and you can see there as McLeod gets over the curbing, trying to get around Max Grau, and yeah, that is just what Patry wanted to see as they come out of Le Mans now, make their way onto the Ulman Straight, and as they do, Caleb Patry with perhaps his largest lead of the entire race here. He's now opened things up to about 5, maybe 6 car lengths, and it's more a battle for second now than it is a battle for the lead.
Yeah, I think they've given up on catching the leader, but that's going to leave Grau under attack from Jackson McLeod. One more corner, and you can go through this about 100 different ways. Let's see how it works side by side for second place in the SRFs. Grau on the inside, Jackson McLeod on the outside. And over the bumps to the checkered flag, Caleb Patry is free and clear. He'll win in the 198 car, but for second, it's Jackson McLeod, an expertly done pass in the final corner. He'll get it done for second in the SRFs.
All right, so great battle there, and let's see now as Max King takes it home 4th and Larry McLeod 5th. Let's look at that battle for 6th that we had coming through, and it looks like Volandia managed to get back around Orza and Steve Ray. Volandia is going to end up finishing 6th, and then we've got the battle a little bit further back. We're looking at Dave Ogburn there, who takes it home in 12th, manages to hold out over the 7 of Justin Clardy. Those two drivers were pretty much attached at the hip for the majority of this race as well.
Absolutely. So the rest of the field kind of trickling on through here, Greg, but here's a look at the race results. It was Patry. He just kind of drove away at the end there. They got distracted, and this is something that typically happens with these lower horsepower cars. It's very draft dependent. If you lose that draft or you get distracted with someone else, the leader will just get to walk away. So that was a dream scenario for the 198.
Yeah, it definitely was as they came out of the tower turn 13, with Grau dropping wheels and both drivers there trying to get the best position going into the chicane at Le Mans. It really gave Patry the opportunity to stretch out again the biggest gap that he'd had probably the entire race, and he really ran a very clean race today, Kyle. As I was watching his lines through a lot of these corners, he was hitting his marks, and there were very consistent, and maybe more so than any of the other drivers in the top 5.
Well, we do have Caleb Patry kind of hanging out in Discord, Greg, so if you want to see if we can talk to him, I can drag him in, and we'll see if we can get a conversation.
Yeah, why don't we bring him on in?
Hey, Caleb, it's Kyle and Greg from the SCCA eSports Super Tour booth. You got a copy?
Yep, I do.
Excellent. Caleb, congratulations on the win today. You had a pretty tough battle there for the majority of the race. Things opened up for you towards the end. Why don't you walk us through it a little bit?
Definitely. The start was great. Max got a pretty good jump when I followed him through. And looks like he kind of ran into trouble there that first lap, and I was able to get around him. And from there on out, the plan was to hold my position as best as possible. I knew I wouldn't be able to shake those guys since they were in the draft. So just knocked down consistent laps, not making any mistakes, and tried to hold them off as best as possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I was just telling Kyle before we grabbed you how consistent you appeared to be lap after lap here, and tell us towards the very end of the race as Max and Jackson started to battle it out there right behind you. Did you get the feeling that maybe that last lap or last 2 laps, certainly not that you could relax, but did you think that maybe the pressure might have been off there?
You know, a little bit. I kind of figured, I thought they would try to team up and try to catch me, but it looked like they were trying to battle each other that whole lap. So I knew I had a shot at it that last lap, but I told myself I had to keep my head down and keep going.
There you go. So Caleb, we're going to see you in any more races this evening?
I plan to run the big bore race next, and that's about it.
All right, excellent. Well, we'll definitely look forward to you in the big bore race. Want to thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your win in the eSports Super Tour tonight from Sebring.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Greg, looks like we got Larry McLeod back here in the booth. We're going to jump to break here to get loaded into the next event, which will be the touring class. But Larry, how was it out there for you? Came home P5.
That was pretty intense. The intense right off the start. So, starting on the front row there, not quite sure, knowing that Max had the right to decide when to go, watching the safety car pull in. He went and had, I don't know if it was Caleb behind him, and they just took off. And I said, all right, well, let's just try to get in line. Sean made a bit of a mix of it, so we weren't quite how that was going to sort out. After that, we started just sort of playing in line for a while. And I radioed to Jackson behind me. I said, you know what? Why don't you get in front of me? When that happened, the other two just launched me. I said, all right, fine. But at least I'd let Jackson sort of fight it out. Tried to get by those guys, and I had Max King there for a while, but I couldn't hold him on the last lap. But it was intense, just trying that whole group. This is not an easy track to pass on, despite being wide and long straightaways. It is not at all easy. It is intense. It's one thing.
Yeah, a lot of the traditional turns, heavy braking turns where you might find passing opportunities here, the exits of those turns are rather short, so it's very hard to make a pass stick. Now, I noticed that you did have some issues on the start, as you said. Looked like the two cars, both Patry and Max Grouse, started to move away from you on the start, but things definitely got straightened out. Now, tell me, both you and Jackson were taking a very different line going through Sunset, and you seemed through the first half of the race, typically when you'd lose ground to Patry on the Ullman Straight, you'd make up a lot of it coming back out of 17, going onto the front straight. Was that just an adjustment that you decided to make partway through the race after seeing what Patry was doing through there, or is that your normal line through that corner?
17's a brutal corner. This car, it's weird. It drives through 17 like a live axle car. It bounces and hammers all over the place. Did a session a couple of days ago with Billy Davis, and he was in the Skippy and I'm in this. In fact, he was bouncing back and forth between the two cars. And the Skippy, you can chuck it in there, slide it, and it sucks up the bumps. This car just gets hammered through there, and it's impossible. So if you hit the wrong bump and you're going to spin, so sometimes you're driving through there just trying to not hit the big bump. So through the race, you're just playing lead and follow and just dancing around the broken glass to not step on it and trying to come out of there with a bit of momentum to get down to one before the other guy gets alongside of you. And that was the big struggle with that, because it takes away one as a reasonable passing zone if you don't get any momentum off of 17, and it just makes it really, really tough.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looked like there were definitely parts of the track where Patry had the advantage, and for quite a while there were certain sections that you and your son definitely looked stronger in, and again at some point you stop drafting and you start battling, and I think that's really where Patry had the opportunity to start walking away.
Yeah, and that's your classic. Everybody stays in line. You get the 5-car breakaway. I think when Sean got out of the mix, that helped us break away a little more, because honestly, he was a little bit spicier on the opening laps. You guys probably noticed.
Yes.
The rest of us settled down, and it was stick our nose in around Caleb to kind of see where his mistakes were, but no one was going to make any moves. I let Jackson by, and again, that was a bit of strategic between he and I. I realized he was going to be quicker and I could follow him, but I didn't expect the two Maxes to go right by me. But that's fine. Jackson was able to try some things behind Caleb. But when you get down to the last lap, you go for something. If it doesn't work, then you try to grab second, it looks like that's what he was able to do. And the kid's got speed, and I'm looking forward to the next race. So it was fun. It was a good time.